What's up, guys? Ivan Carranza here, and welcome to Bass Tone Tuesday. Today, we're gonna talk about crossover distortion. In a previous episode, we talked about more of a tube, vintage-like, old-school type of distortion. And in case you haven't watched that episode, there's going to be a card up here for you to check that out because it's a really interesting topic. And crossover distortion, however, is a more of a modern approach, even though it's a technique that's been used for many years. And it involves splitting your signal and keeping a clean and consistent low end, and then distorting the mid and treble frequencies to bring all the harmonic content up. And that way you perceive the bass a bit clearer, but the punch, on the low end keeps consistent throughout the whole track. And what you heard in the intro was my bass run through a plugin by Neural DSP called Parallax. And we're gonna go later into my screen to show you what it's doing. But this is how my bass sounds like on its own, actually. Right? It's a typical P-bass sound. The strings aren't super fresh, but still you can get some good distortion out of them. And you see this guy here in a bit, this Darkglass pedal, and we're going to talk about it also in a second. But first, let me show you how the bass sounds like on its own during that intro track that you heard. As you can hear, the bass is pretty distorted. It sounds almost like an additional guitar, right? And if you were to do the same thing with a regular distortion pedal or a plugin, most of them, if you crank the drive too much, you start losing low end. And that's when the crossover distortion comes in handy, because it allows you to keep a clean and punchy low end, which is compressed as well, and then distort the mids and trebles to taste, to either cut through the mix or to blend with the guitars and the drums a bit better. So let's take a listen to how the signal sounds like with and without the plugin. Okay guys, so now you're taking a look at my screen, and this is the project that of the intro track, and these are the tracks that I recorded. This is a clean signal, this is the same signal but recorded with the Darkglass pedal, and these are the guitars and the drums here. And I already have the plugins set here on the clean track, but let me play you just the clean track on its own first. Right? So that's a normal clean signal. Now if I open up the Parallax plugin, which is this here, you see here kind of like the curve that it has. And if I turn all of this off, this module right here below is a low compression. So if I turn only this on, it's just bass, right? And I can set the the low pass filter here. To include more or less bass frequencies. And here I can control when it starts compressing and stuff. And here's the level. But let's take a listen now to the bass in the mix without any plugins. Also just the clean signal. Right, okay, I'm gonna just loop like 4 bars here. I'm gonna turn on just the lows. And that alone is already keeping the low end a lot more consistent. Maybe a bit louder in general, but still, it's a fully inconsistent low end. Now this is what the mid section sounds like on its own. The high. Everything. Without the plugin. So other than the parallax, I also added some high pass and low pass filters, like at 70 Hertz, I think, at 70 and 10K. There's not much happening. And I added some compression to the whole signal. Alternatively, if you don't have a plugin that does that, everything in one place, you could, for example, duplicate your clean signal and then apply different processing to both of them. So you could remove all the upper frequencies of one signal and compress it, and then distort the other signal and remove the low end and then blend both together. So let's try doing that. I'm gonna duplicate this track and I'm gonna name it drive or cross distortion, something like this, right? And this is a clean signal. What am I gonna do here now is grab that high pass filter and low pass filter. I'm just gonna trim. Like there. So it's just lows. And I'll keep it like that. Now on this track, I'm gonna do kind of like the opposite thing. I'm gonna grab the lows like that, and I'm gonna add another plugin. I'm gonna grab a Darkglass plugin, and we don't have any lows there. put both together, now this still has too much lows. So now we have two tracks that do pretty much the same thing as that one other plugin, but you can control how much bite, so to speak, your signal has. By raising the volume, right? And let's hear it in context now. And I'm gonna do it again, just start raising the drive slowly. For example, you could do something like that if you don't have one particular plugin that does everything for you. And after putting those two together, what you can do as well is just send both of those tracks to an auxiliary bus. I'm going to put bass full, for example. And here I am gonna put a compressor. And so that way you can, take that clean signal that you recorded, split it, and then control exactly how much drive you want to have, how much lows you want to have, and you can move it also throughout the track. Maybe during the chorus you want more bite, maybe you want less during the verse, and so forth. Now, you also might wonder, okay, that's all cool, you have your plugins, just like on the previous video. How can I do it with my gear, with my pedals? Or what can I get to do it, for a live show if I don't want to bring my laptop, for example? And that's when, for example, this guy comes into play, or also the Tech 21 YYZ does it as well. But the Darkglass X Ultra is especially designed for that. And what it does is just what the Parallax plugin does. It allows you to keep a clean and compressed low end. You even have a compression knob here. And you can distort the mid frequencies, and you can select at which point the crossover starts to function. And it also has a caption, which is also really good if you're distorting or heavily distorting a signal. So this is how my bass sounds like again. This is how it sounds like with the capsim only. Now, if I turn on the distortion, it sounds like that, right? So let me turn off all the volume of the high end. And these are only lower frequencies. And you can control where. This is only like the sub content. You're already getting some low mids in there and keeping them clean. You had it around there. And this is how the upper frequencies sound like on its own, or on their own. Right? And by moving this knob, You can pick at which point the treble and mid frequencies are starting to distort. So if you want a more like a pristine, like very like clear drive, you can just go like really high. And it sounds kind of weak right now because we don't have any low end. Right? You have a very consistent low end and a very distorted top end. And I prefer more like growlier tones, so more like in this. Like that. And because you're compressing the low end, you always have a lot of punch. You don't have to worry about losing definition or losing the weight and the punch of your bass because you're over distorting. So now let's take a listen to the same intro track, but using that pedal. I prefer the tone that I dialed in with the Darkglass pedal myself. I have to experiment a bit more with the Neural DSP plugin, but this pedal is great if you want to have a very aggressive and punchy distorted tone. Now, there's one thing that I do have to say, and that is that it is very cool to keep, a really punchy low end at all times. It is very cool to be able to distort, to heavily distort your bass signal for, heavier types of music. But it's easy to go, a bit out of hand with the drive on stuff like this because you're always having a punchy low end. By over distorting, you can create something that's kind of tiresome for the ears. Listening to that for several minutes can be kind of tiresome for the ears. So try to pay attention to that and reference how the bass sounds like in conjunction with your instruments. Because, like I said, it's pretty easy to go a bit out of hand because you have always a very punchy low end, but it can be a bit, piercing to the ears. So I hope you guys liked the video. Let me know in the comments which is your favorite distortion pedal. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with the content that's coming to the channel. As always, thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.